Thank you, Mr. Costa. I now recognize Mr. Moran of Texas for 5 minutes.
That was a perfect segue to the first question I have. So let's go with Mr. Costa's question, because we did have a good time discussing the NATO accession for Sweden this weekend, both bilaterally with Swedish government officials and then multilaterally with EU Parliament members. And there's strong support all the way around from everybody to make sure that Sweden gets into to NATO and to do it in a very timely fashion. So what pressures are we applying from the U.S. government to ensure that the blockade or the objection by Turkey goes away and that Hungary follows suit and that we get Sweden into NATO as quickly as possible?
This is a top priority of the United States that Sweden become a NATO ally by Vilnius, and we are actively and persistently raising this with Turkey and with Hungary at all levels. Most recently, yesterday, Secretary Blinken in his meeting with Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan focused intensely on this. So our belief is that allies have taken, or Sweden has taken, Turkey's counterterrorism concerns into account and has implemented largely the memorandum of agreement that they reached with Turkey and Finland, and Sweden is ready to become a member of the alliance now.
Now, let me just take issue just briefly with the word you said, largely. You said that Sweden largely complied with the MOU, but I haven't found an instance where they did not comply. And in fact, it looks like to me that Sweden has complied beyond what the MOU required, has gone above and beyond, and has done everything that Turkey has required in order to remove those objections. Is there something specifically that the U.S. government would say that Sweden still needs to do?
No, I would agree. They have implemented the MOA.
Yeah, and they've done a great job getting to that 2% mark for defense spending of GDP, and that's getting there quickly. And so it looks like to me that we need to continue to put pressure on Turkey. Does Turkey understand that if this does not happen, if the objection does not go away and Sweden does not accede into NATO, that their request for military equipment could be at peril?
So yes, I mean, I think Turkey realizes, and because they're hearing it not only from us but from all allies, the strong support for Sweden to join by Vilnius. They also realize that ratifying Sweden by the Vilnius summit would help in many of these of the weapons transfers that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's critical that we continue, and we are as a bipartisan group, at least this last weekend, and I think consistently have projected that message from Congress to Turkish officials that we need them to cooperate in this manner, because Sweden's decision to come out of neutrality after 200 years, frankly, of being neutral. I mean, most folks don't know that Sweden is a big step for them. They've been a neutral country for 200 years, and they decided to come out and apply for NATO membership. They, in the first time in about 80 years, provided weapons systems to another country. They hadn't done that since the World War II time period. Those are big steps for them to take to say we are on the side of what's good in this world, and we need to meet that with appropriate force, in my opinion, and appropriate leverage to make sure that their steps are successful in getting into NATO. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. It's a historic shift that we've seen in both Finland and Sweden. These were centuries-old policies of neutrality, and so a point that we frequently make to Turkey is not only is it about Turkey demands on counterterrorism, but this is also an issue that affects alliance security, and it affects the security of other allies as well.
That's right. All right, so when we're talking about the NATO alliance, just with my last minute, let's talk a little bit about Ukraine. And I know they want to get into NATO one of these days. There's some hesitation to do that before peace, after the Ukraine-Russia war, once that ends. And there's talk about maybe a pathway, but at the Vilnius summit, do you think it might be better just to set some benchmarks out there to say, hey, we need to get to these benchmarks before we even establish a pathway potentially for Ukraine becoming part of NATO? Do you think that's an appropriate and wise step?
Well, I think what we're trying to accomplish, and I think we will accomplish, is a really strong message of support for Ukraine, including not only going beyond what we said before about our commitment that Ukraine will become an ally, but also to provide increased support from NATO for its current conflict with Russia, and also a really package that we're building, really an unprecedented package, to help Ukraine implement the reforms it needs so that it's ready to join NATO once the conflict ends.
All right, thanks. I'd continue to urge you to do whatever we can for Sweden to get them into NATO. As you know, they're going to be a great long-term economic, diplomatic, and military partner, and them being part of NATO is a critical step in that process. So thank you. I yield back.